All right, ladies and gentlemen, Michael Cohen here with you on a Sports Talk Nation. It is Super Bowl Sunday. But of course, another story has come up. So, folks, Aaron Rodgers, the Aaron Rodgers era is now over in New York, as the word coming down today, starting off with the scoop from Jay Glazer on Fox Sports. That here is the quote. Aaron Rodgers flew back to New Jersey last week to meet with the Jets about his future with the team, only to be told that the team was moving on from him. If that means he'll be on a June 1st designation that allows him to sign with any team in the league on March 12th, if he decides to continue to play. Given that Aaron made the effort to fly back to discuss his future points to him continuing to play, it just won't be for the New York Jets. So it's over. And it was an absolutely disappointing and probably one of the most disappointing eras, not just in the history of the Jets, but possibly in the NFL when you consider the pedigree of the player this is. A Hall of Famer in Aaron Rodgers moving on to another team. We have seen this happen a lot over in recent years. Peyton Manning going from the Colts to the Broncos. Tom Brady from the Patriots to the Buccaneers. Yes, and even Phillip Rivers from the Chargers to the Colts. And in each of those cases, all those guys ended up taking their team to the postseason. In a case of Manning, to the Super Bowl twice with the Broncos, winning once, losing once, and with the Brady winning with the Buccaneers. But with Aaron Rodgers, it was just a total train wreck right from the jump. And it started off with great promise, right? We all thought everyone was on the bandwagon. I was on the bandwagon. You were on the bandwagon. We all were on it. That this could be the turnaround. The Jets had a great draft in 2022. They had good young players. All they needed was a quarterback who didn't have his head up his rear end, as was the case with Zach Wilson at times during his first 2 years. We thought, hey, you bring in Aaron Rodgers with all these great pieces, maybe the Jets could become a championship caliber team, but it just never happened. And it's sad. It's unfortunate. Starting with the injury from 2 years ago with the Achilles tendon tear, just the absolute horror of that 4 plays into the season, sending us all the way back to 1999 when Vinny Testaverde ruptured his Achilles tendon, and the irony of it all, the fact that Testaverde was standing next to Rodgers on the coin toss of that game, and here we go again. It was the thought when that happened. It's just, even though the Jets won that game against Buffalo, it was a moment that was frozen in time because it just echoed that the season, in spite of everything that you want to think about at that time, was over. And it was over. The Jets went 7-10. It was a rough season, rough sledding. And then we get into this year, and the thought was, okay, you have a healthy Aaron Rodgers. Maybe this team can make another run at this thing. You're running it back with the same coaching staff, the same GM. Everything's the same. Saleh, Dulles, everything's going to be great. And what happens? It falls apart again. And a lot of that is, of course, on Woody Johnson, as we all know, with the firing of Robert Saleh after the London game. But even with that, Rodgers wasn't exactly fully healthy to start the year. He was hurt. He was still hurting from the Achilles tear from last season. And he took a number of big hits early in the season. He took a big hit against Denver and was limping at the end of that game, the game the Jets lost 10-9. Took a massive hit against Minnesota in London, and I just happened to be 7 rows up when it happened, and he's crawling on all fours trying to get himself up. He was beaten up this past season with the Jets, and a lot of throws just weren't there. They didn't have the same zip, didn't have the same pop as they did. And yes, he did play better as the season progressed. He did throw 28 touchdowns when it was all said and done, but it was too little too late. There are too many games, like the game against Seattle, where he throws a ball underneath and it gets picked off by somebody like Leonard Williams and brought back to the house for a touchdown. Too many games like we saw against the Colts where he couldn't make the big throw necessary to get the Jets over the hump. And yes, there was a lot of blame to go around. You could blame the owner for the way he handled the coach situation with Saleh and Jeff Ulbrich, and certainly Ulbrich was in over his head. The defense completely imploded in the second half of the season. It was just a total cataclysmic disaster. And then on top of that, you have Rodgers, trying to bring in all of his Green Bay guys in, Lazard, and, of course, Devontae Adams. And that worked, look, he and Adams certainly had a great connection at the second half of the year, but apparently, if you believe rumors, reports, whatever you want to believe, that it kind of irked Garrett Wilson to the point that he was talking about getting traded because it was always, Rodgers to Adams. The second half of the year, it just wasn't working out. It just wasn't going to work out. So at the end of the day, and I know there are a lot of fans who are divided on this. There are a lot of Jet fans who say the Jets should run it back. Aaron Glenn and Darren Mogi should run it back with Aaron Rodgers. But the fact is, they can't. They just can't do it. You can't put on the onus on a new coaching staff and a new GM and a new front office to try to carry forward what was unfortunately, a failed experiment from the last administration. There's a reason why these guys are here and not Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas. And it's because of all the decisions that were made that led to a 5-12 season in 2024. That's what happened. And Rodgers was a part of it. He was a part of it. And to sit here and to be honest with yourself and say, can Aaron Rodgers still sling the ball around the field? Yes. Does he have the legs to do it anymore for a full 17-game season again? I don't know. And he's 41, going to be 42 at the end of next season. It's time, unfortunately, and as is the case with Father Time, to turn the page. Whether he retires or ends up somewhere else, I don't know. If you ask me right now, on February 9th, as we're about to kick off the Super Bowl to end this 2024 season, I would say maybe the Steelers, maybe the Raiders, maybe the Saints, maybe being possible fits for Rodgers, but even the Raiders and Saints are kind of rebuilding, and the Steelers may try to run back with Russell Wilson unless he goes to the Raiders to be with Pete Carroll again, reunite those two from Seattle, or maybe the Steelers will stick around with Justin Fields. I don't know. The point is, there's not going to be a lot of suitors right now. Teams are going with younger quarterbacks. Teams are going with drafting younger quarterbacks now. They're going with guys who can do that run-pass option thing that has been a key in the NFL nowadays. So, unfortunately, as is the case with a lot of great stars, not all of them end their careers hoisting the Lombardi Trophy. I would have loved to have seen Aaron Rodgers do that here with New York with the Jets. I would have loved to have had the Jet hat here instead of Kansas City today. I really would have, but it didn't happen. It just wasn't going to happen. It's time to move on. He was as much a part of the problem as he tried to be as much as a part of the solution here in New York. The distractions, the ayahuasca, the Netflix documentaries, the book deals, ending up on a Pat McAfee show, and you never knew what he was going to say, whether it be politically charged or whether it be, charged at the owner, whatever it was going to be. It was fun. It was entertaining for us. So, as I've said before, but it's a new regime, and they had to move on. You can't put this on Aaron Glenn and Darren Mogi and say, hey, run it back with this and see what you can do. They tried. They were open to it. They thought about it. But at the end of the day, it only produced 5 wins. Now, the question's going to be, and let me just bring this up here. This was tweeted by Rich Cimini, okay, all about the cap hit, right? $49 million cap hit and dead money from previous bonuses. The Jets can take the full hit this year or designate him as a 6-1 cut. A 6-1 cut, they would have to carry his 2025 cap charge of $23.5 million until June 1st. When then it would drop to $14 million, a $9.5 million in savings, but they get hit with a $35 million charge next year. If Rodgers were to play this year under the existing contract, there would be a $63 million dead cap charge when the contract voids next year in 2026. In essence, you are dedicating $86 million present and future for one season of play. They have to move on, guys. They have to move on. Now, is this going to be a full rebuild? And I see people saying, well, this means now they're not going to win. They weren't winning anyway. You're going to win with a 42-year-old quarterback who, kind of has beaten up legs. I would say kind of hobbling around one leg in some ways, right? You're going to win with that? You're going to win 10 games? Think about that for a second. I know he's Aaron Rodgers. I know what he's done. But he's not the Aaron Rodgers we saw 5 years ago in Green Bay when he was throwing 45 touchdowns to 2 or 3 picks. It's not that same player. It's sad. The money says it all. You have to move on. So the question is going to be, what are they going to do? Is this going to be a, as they say, tear it down year? I guess it kind of unfortunately might be. But at the same time, they really don't have any choice. They really don't. They weren't going to win with him, considering the money that was involved, and they're probably not going to do much winning without him now. So who are they going to bring in? You know, you could mention Matthew Stafford, who may or may not be with the Rams next year. That's kind of a fluid situation. Kirk Cousins has a fluid situation down in Atlanta. He may or may not get traded. I don't know if they just want to, take on that salary, considering the salary they have to try to defer. It's going to be like Bobby Bonilla. He's going to be paying him until he's 1,000 years old. You could go that route, obviously, as I just mentioned, Kirk Cousins, or you could just bring in a journeyman guy like a Jameis Winston or a Marcus Mariota, a Carson Wentz, who ironically will be the backup quarterback tonight for Kansas City. You can bring in a Carson Wentz. Those guys are free agents. And they put up, when they've been given a chance, when you look at the numbers, and I know a lot of people all love the numbers, right? All about, oh, look, he threw 25 touchdowns. He threw this. If you look at the numbers, they're not bad. If you just want to go on numbers, they're not bad. They're decent. I'm not telling you they're going to win anything, but they're decent numbers. You can bring in Justin Fields. He's a free agent. You want to go that route? I know a lot of people are not crazy about Justin Fields. I understand that. But the bottom line is this. The Jets can do one thing the Jets can't do. You cannot waste your first-round pick or second-round pick on a quarterback. Don't do it again. Do not do it. And this is not a draft to draft a quarterback. Everyone says this is one of the weaker draft classes in the NFL. And there's been talk about Jackson Dart, who is from Ole Miss, and there's talk about guys like Kyle McCord and Will Howard. Those are the quarterbacks that may drop to later rounds. You want to take a flyer on one of those guys, third, fourth round, fine. But you need a journeyman to kind of take the Ryan Fitzpatrick, Josh McCown, Vinny Testaverde role and just be the veteran presence and see what happens. There's enough talent on this team that they could find a way to get to 8 wins if they get decent quarterback play, right? They get decent quarterback play. They could get to 8 or 9 wins. They could be in the mix. But it's about building, it's about setting the tone, and this is a coach and a staff now that has to figure out who is going to be a part of this moving forward, which guys they want to fit the plan. Unfortunately, Aaron Rodgers, because he's a guy who likes to have a lot of his own guys. His buddy Nathaniel Hackett's gone. Certainly, Lazard's going to be gone. Devontae Adams, apparently the talk is that he's going to get traded, and the Jets haven't been in contact with him. He wants to go back out west to the Chargers or the 49ers or the Rams. So you knew just on that report that something was going down with Rodgers, that he wasn't going to come back here. So it's a fresh start. And for Aaron Glenn and for Darren Mogi and for this front office and this coaching staff, they need a fresh start. And for Aaron Rodgers, he needs a fresh start to get away from the Jets. I think for him, if he plays again, and if he does get a chance to play again, needs a fresh start. The best place for him, if pieces fall a certain way in Pittsburgh, that's the place for him to go. Go play with Mike Tomlin, who never has a losing season, and maybe he can reclaim some of that status that he's had throughout his career in Green Bay by having a decent season with the Steelers. And I know some Jet fans are going, oh my God, if you had kept him, this is what you would have been us instead of... Who knows? Maybe it would, maybe not. The fact is, it was just not working out for either side. And the split was inevitable. So we'll see where it lands, folks. The Jets and Aaron Rodgers, it was an era, a 2-year run with a lot of high hopes. And we all thought it was going to be something special. I thought it was going to be something special. You thought it was going to be something special. Unfortunately, it was just another sad day of the same old Jets. We'll talk to you next time.